Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, everyone. So my name is Eric D. I'm a Interim Director for the Institute of Happy Living and Clinical Disease Prevention at the University of British Columbia Okanagan campus. So I would like to begin that I'm joining you in the Sioux Okanagan Nations, which is the ancestral and also unceded territory of the Sioux Okanagan Nations people of that. So, and also we'd like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places near and far and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of this land. So welcomes to the 13th annual Okanagan Embrace Aging Month, and thank you for joining us today. So Embrace Aging Month is co-hosted by Interior Health and the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at UBC Okanagan. So in this month, in the month of March, the Embrace Aging Month was launched like 13 years ago to celebrate and raise awareness about positive aging, and has once again organized a number of education opportunity and event during the month of March. So the sessions today are designed for, and many others are designed for everyone, young and old alike, and also focus on a variety of topics related to healthy aging and ways to improve the quality of life among seniors and also their family caregivers. Our goal is to inspire everyone to embrace positive aging. So for these coming sessions for that, and please just housekeeping for that. So there's a closed captions button, so you can turn closed captioning off and to select the high captions buttons on the menu bar. If you have many questions, feel free to use the comments or for the speakers in the chat box and during the presentations. So we'll read out the questions after the end of the presentations. If you have any feedback for these events, please complete the surveys that we email you after this event. So having said that, tonight I would like to invite my co-hosts and carers to join us and also to introduce our panelists today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning. My name is Clara Dick. I'm so happy to introduce today's session, Last Aid in Canada, Increasing Community Participation in Palliative Care. Our speakers today are Cheryl Spencer. She's the interim CEO of Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association, and Tara Landry. She's the communications officer for Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. So I'd love to invite you two to share your webinar with us.
Marvelous, thank you. We'll start with Tara.
So just a little bit about me. I joined the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association in 2023, predominantly working on the Advanced Care Planning in Canada project, and have now moved into Last Aid and general Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association work as well. So if you've ever seen a social media post or read one of our blog articles or been to a Last Aid course, we've probably had a little bit of communication.
Yeah, marvelous. Tara's our communications extraordinaire. Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl. I've been with the association since 2009. I've held various roles there, starting largely in our conference planning capacity. So if any of you have ever had the opportunity to come to our conferences, I hope you've stopped and said hello to me. I'm usually there. All this to say, I've stepped into the interim CEO role this past November, so still finding my footing, but enjoying the opportunity to get to work on all of these spectacular programs that we have running, like Last Aid. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association, we are the national voice for hospice palliative care in Canada. Our goal is to ensure that everyone in Canada has equitable access to quality hospice palliative care for themselves and their families. We largely do policy advocacy, education, awareness raising, and influencing public policy, working closely with our 10 provincial associations, with BC Provincial Association obviously representing the Yukon Territory as well. So we are national in true scope of the word. The CHPCA has been around, was established in 1991, opening its first office in Ottawa in 1994. So just on that note, I would like to provide a little land acknowledgement for Ottawa, given that that is our headquarters, that we are on the unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and recognize the peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia, and we honor the peoples and their land and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. So thank you so much for being here. We're excited to tell you about the Last Aid program. So over to you, Tara.
Sorry about that. So we are going to start right off the bat with our first poll. And it is anonymous and it's not mandatory, but we'd love to just find out if any of you have heard of Last Aid before this presentation. I don't see the poll results, so.
No, I'm not seeing, well, I can see who's participating. So I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm going to end the poll and I think it'll ask me if I can share just a moment. Yes. Can you see them?
I
Marvelous.
can. So great. There are a few people who have heard about Last Aid. A big part of Last Aid is the 95% rule. And this is a concept by Dr. Alan Kelleher. And it highlights that 95% of the time spent managing a life-limiting illness occurs with family, friends, and the community. So that leaves only 5% that involves healthcare professionals. In Canada specifically, family or friend caregivers provide 70 to 80% of care to individuals with a chronic health problem or disability. And these figures really emphasize that most care happens outside of formal healthcare settings. And this underscores the critical role that personal and community support during life-limiting illness, dying and death, and grief and bereavement. And this shows that we really have to focus on building the capacity and confidence of individuals and communities to support each other through these, something everybody goes through. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl.
Yeah. Great. So serious illness and dying and grief are profound experiences. So as Canada is an aging society, the Last Aid course equips us with knowledge and confidence to support those at end of life and to navigate our own mortality with greater understanding and courage. So the principles behind the Last Aid program are really that it encourages open conversations. It's trying to make talking about death and dying easier, including grief in that. It's helping to reduce the fear and stigma that people often associate with these topics. The program itself is trying to boost the skills and confidence of people to help those learn about what palliative care is and help them feel more prepared to care for those in their life that are seriously ill. So as Tara said, 95% of care is happening in the home. So we want to instill the confidence in the population to go through that process. And also the last sort of piece about Last Aid is that we're trying to instill a strengthening sense of community around the death and dying process. So by building up our compassionate communities and giving people the knowledge and skills to support those facing end of life or loss, all the way through to the grief and bereavement process, so that we're there as a community together. So just to note something important about a Last Aid program, we recognize that that grief and bereavement and death and dying are all really big topics. So the expectation of the Last Aid program is not to teach everybody everything. It really is an appetizer course. So we provide participants in the Last Aid course with a large set of resources beyond the course so that they can do their own exploration. But really it is just components of the death and dying process and the grief and bereavement process to start the conversation and to start the learning about this important topic that we're dealing with in our communities. The last aid program is offered in both in-person settings and online. The thinking behind that is trying to make it as accessible as possible for everybody who's needing to take part in these conversations. So for caregivers and individuals who can't easily attend in-person activities, the online courses really are a popular alternative. And the last thing to sort of say is that it is a global movement. It's not something that's happening just in Canada. And there's developing versions of the last aid course for many different subgroups in the works. We'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation, but just to say that it is an ever living, breathing, evolving program. So Tara, I think it's over to you now.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the rollout of Last Aid in Canada. It was first introduced in 2021 in Canada, and at the time there was growing interest in finding ways to make conversations about death, dying, and grief more accessible to the general public, not just to healthcare professionals. So through connections with the palliative care community, the program actually started with Hospice Palliative Care Ontario. And from there, a small group of committed facilitators worked together to adapt the course for the Canadian context. And one of the key elements of that model was the co-facilitation approach. So this is where we pair a clinical professional, such as a nurse or a physician, with someone from the community who has lived experience. So each last aid course does have at least 2 facilitators, one that fits each of these roles. The first phase of the work was focused on piloting the course in Ontario. So between 2022 and 2023, approximately 20 to 25 pilot sessions were delivered, and this allowed the team to refine the content and the approach. Feedback from participants was consistent. It consistently showed that the course really did help people feel more comfortable talking about death and also felt more confident in supporting others. Unfortunately, there were some capacity challenges. While there was strong interest in continuing and expanding the program, it really did become clear that a different structure would be needed in order to do this. And that's really where CHPCA came in. Last Aid transitioned to us at CHPCA, but also several of the original Ontario facilitators came too. So our focus has really been on scaling Last Aid nationally and putting the right supports in place to sustain it over time. One of our first priorities was to move from a pilot model to a more structured national program. And this included developing a standardized facilitator training process. So all of the facilitators are trained through CHPCA at this point. And this is to ensure consistency across provinces while still allowing for local adaptation. We've also developed a facilitator guide and a facilitator hub, which is a SharePoint where facilitators can find marketing materials, a place where they can submit their courses. All of the last aid materials is all in one place. And if we make a change or an update, they automatically have access to that. So it's tools, resources, and ongoing support for the facilitators who are actually delivering the course. And this has really been an important step in building confidence and consistency among the facilitators. Part of this focus also deals with the operational side of running Last Aid. So this includes registration processes, scheduling, and marketing. And while these elements are not always visible, they are really critical to making the program accessible and sustainable. So we've also been working to build partnerships across the country, recognizing that Last Aid is most effective when it is rooted in communities and delivered by people who understand local needs and contexts. And today we are seeing growing interest from organizations and individuals across Canada who want to bring Last Aid to their communities. Though we are still in early stages of national expansion, we believe the foundation is now in place to support that growth in a more coordinated and sustainable way. And what continues to stand out is how strongly this program resonates. It really does fill a gap by creating a space for conversations that many people want to have, but they're not always sure how to begin them. So at this point, we're going to do our second poll. And this is really a question. In 2024, CHPCA did a national poll, and we want to see what you think. Oh, I'm sorry, my notes are being hidden. Just give me a second. There we go. So what percentage of people in Canada do you think stated in our national poll that needs to be more open about talking about illness and death in our society? So there's a few in there. This is multiple choice. What you think that percentage was?
This one excites me. I'm anxious to hear how many people get this answer right.
Okay. I think everyone's had a chance to answer this one. Okay, so we had some people who picked 25. No one picked 40. That's interesting. A lot of people, most people picked 75 and a few picked 80, and 80 is the correct answer. Like that's a lot, 80%. There's not a lot of things that 80% of Canadians would agree on. So this is a big one. And so as I mentioned on the last slide, Last Aid fills a gap we have in our society by creating space for these conversations. These conversations that a lot of people want to have, but they really don't know how to begin. And that's why we say that Last Aid is for everyone. And it's why I personally think Last Aid is such an important course to bring to people in Canada. So I'm going to tell you a little personal story. I might get a little emotional, but bear with me. So when I was in my 30s, my father passed away, and not a lot of my friends had actually dealt with someone close to them dying. And at a time when I really needed my people around me, I found that they didn't know what to say to me, so they just didn't say anything. And I lost a lot of friends during this process. Like they were too scared to say the wrong thing, and so they just kind of disappeared. And that really showed me how much we need to learn how to support the people we love. And it got so bad that at one point, I wasn't able to during my grieving process, I found it hard to go out in public because I never knew when I was going to break down, and realizing how people aren't very good with dealing with that, I kind of stopped going a lot of places. And during that time, one of my friends got married and I wasn't invited to the wedding. And later, a few months later, I gave her a wedding present, and she said, "Well, I think you're trying to make me feel guilty for not inviting you, but we didn't see you for 6 months." And I had to explain to her that she didn't see me because I was grieving. And yeah, that was a really hard time. So getting involved in Last Aid and really believing that we are helping people not just learn more about the dying process, but how to be there for the people they love I just think that's amazing.
Yeah, it really speaks to building up the compassionate community movement within Last Aid. So stories like yours, Tara, are really important because it does create the space and the starting point to have some of these conversations and realize that there is discomfort, but education and knowledge and programs like this sort of move us beyond that into a space where we really can be our vulnerable and authentic selves. We don't have feel like we need to change who we are as we go through the grieving process. We become sort of able to acknowledge when people are living in those moments. So thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure a similar experience that many people have had, every day for sure. Thanks. So, as Canada is an increasingly aging society, this creates additional pressures to support dying outside of the medical system. So, despite most Canadians' preferences to die at home, a modern shift of medicalizing dying has really occurred over the last number of years, which has really removed the process of dying at home away from what it used to be years ago. So it was quite common to have wakes and funerals at people's homes, but we've moved past that in our society now. So in doing so, it really has become a disconnection between the average person and understanding the process of death and dying. So bringing sort of all of this back together, is the space for last aid. So we realized that in Canada in 2021-22, about 58% of the people in Canada received palliative care. So one reason is that there's a really widespread misunderstanding of what palliative care really is and what it means. And this leads to a bit of a fear and avoidance of all things palliative care. So there is definitely, when people hear palliative care, there's a misconception about where that fits into the trajectory of care. So palliative care, simply put, really is just focusing on improving quality of life based on whatever the individual themselves values and wants in their own life. So, palliative care manages symptoms and provides physical and emotional, social, spiritual support to both the person themselves and to their family as well. So, it's important to understand that palliative care just isn't for that piece that's around end of life situations. Ideally, palliative care starts at the point of diagnosis to help people live well with a serious illness. So it's also really important to note that only about 15% of Canadians will die suddenly, which leaves the remaining 85% facing chronic illness that requires ongoing care and support. So it's really important that we start these conversations at home to understand and bring this back into a community lens so that people really can be supported in the setting of their choice. Tara, next slide.
So now we're going to take a few minutes and look at the actual last aid course itself. So it is 4 45-minute modules, and it can be delivered in one 3.5-hour session that includes 2 15-minute breaks. But we like to give our facilitators flexibility. So if you happen to be on our website and you look at the upcoming courses, some people like to do it in 4 hours to give more time for discussion. Some like to include an hour break between modules 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then we've even had a couple that have tried 2 modules one week and 2 modules the following week. So again, this is we let our facilitators decide this. But module 1 focuses on how death is a normal part of life, and it really sets the tone for the entire course. It's about helping people understand that death is not something separate from life, but a natural and expected part of it. And during this module, we introduce the basics of palliative care in a very accessible way. Many participants come in with little or no understanding or with misconceptions. So this creates a shared foundation. And another big focus is in reducing fear and discomfort. People often feel unsure about what to say or do, and this module really helps to normalize those feelings. In terms of skills, this is where participants begin to build confidence. They start to recognize when someone might need support and how to start conversations about death and dying. Overall, this module is about shifting mindsets. It opens the door to the rest of the course by making the topic feel safe, approachable, and something we can all engage with. And at this point, I'd like to share a video that is shared in many of our last aid courses. So I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and switch over to my other screen.
Tara, we can't hear the sound.
Oh, okay, just a second. I'm going to stop that, and I think I know the issue. Yes. There we go. I fixed it, I promise. Oh, now you're seeing the wrong screen. Just going to restart it.
I want to tell you what normally happens as someone is dying. Dying, just like being born, is a process our bodies go through quite naturally, with recognized phases that are pretty much the same for everyone. It's all very ordinary. At first, our bodies grow weary. We need more sleep, less food. We may lose our appetite altogether. Some days we can manage an outing or visitors or watching TV. Other days we mainly sleep. All this is normal. Inside our weary bodies, changes are happening. All our systems are running out of energy. Digestion slows down. Our heart may not pump as strongly. Our organs might slow down. All normal. Aside from the physical, I've noticed that dying people's perspective often shifts from themselves to others. The same last messages. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. Most people are not conscious by the time they die. We don't know when we're unconscious. We don't notice time passing or feel our body. It doesn't feel like going to sleep. It's just a state of non-awareness. To begin with, dying people might only be unconscious some of the time. In between, they may wake up and talk, or sip drinks, or listen to the people around them chatting. That's normal. They may become a bit muddled or restless. It helps when people hold their hand and talk in soothing, gentle tones. Familiar, trusted voices calm and comfort. Unconscious people breathe in an unusual way. Their breathing pattern gradually changes backwards and forwards between deep and shallow and between fast and slower breaths. This is normal, and they can make unusual noises. If their breath vibrates their voice box, it might sound like a sigh or a moan. Sometimes their breath gurgles or rattles. It's not uncomfortable. It's a completely normal part of dying. Hearing is the last sense to go. That's why loved ones and caregivers can keep talking while the dying person is unconscious. It's why some people make end-of-life playlists. What about the moment of dying? Well, it's usually very gentle. Our breathing gets slower and more shallow, and then it just very gently stops. A few minutes later, our heart stops too. That's it. No fuss or fear or panic. Of course, saying goodbye to people we love is sad, but knowing what to expect takes away a lot of the fear. I've met so many bereaved people who wish they had talked about dying more. I've never met a person who regretted having those important conversations. We need to talk about it, because talking about death will help us to live together better.
Thanks, Tara. I appreciate that. Yeah. Do we want to transition to the next module?
Yeah. Yes. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. So just to wrap up, in Module 1 is really about what to expect during the dying process so that we can help to reduce fear and provide better comfort to both the dying person and ourselves. So Module 2 really builds on the foundations of Module 1. It moves into the planning and decision-making aspects around death and dying. So once we're comfortable in the program talking a little bit about the process of death, we can begin to think about what it is that we're actually wanting in life. So we introduce advanced care planning at this stage of the program in a very practical way. So it's not just what advanced care planning is, but it's talking about why it matters to engage in advanced care planning and how people can start doing this. So it's really some tangible advice and practical information about getting going in that process. So this module really helps people to understand how the healthcare system works at the end of life, not in an in-depth way because that's such a big topic, but really how to get some of the supports and what supports exist, and how to really how to access those pieces as you're going through the process. So a key piece of this module here is really in that sphere of decision making. So we talk a bit about in the module about how complex decision making can be, especially when others are involved, and really what the role of substitute decision makers or proxies or whatever terminology it is that you're using in your province and place. These terms change all across the country. So it's really what those roles are. I just want to note too that for anybody who's engaging in some of this information today that wants to learn more about advanced care planning themselves, please go to our website, advancedcareplanning.ca, for some of the information around this as well, including some of the terminology that you might encounter as we're talking in this presentation. So from a skills perspective, participants leave this module with a better sense of how to navigate supports and take some personal responsibility for planning ahead in their own life processes. So ultimately, this module is really about empowerment, and it's trying to help people feel more prepared and more informed and more in control of their own future care, which ultimately it really has an impact on your loved ones as well. So I think we're going to flip into our third poll before we engage in one more video that we share as part of the Module 2 resources. So if we could launch that poll. So this poll is really about
I can't seem to launch it for some reason. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We can roll with the punches. Don't worry about it. So I just want you to take a minute and think to yourselves, so we don't need an answer out loud, but how many of you have actually engaged in the process of talking about your health and personal care wishes with your loved ones? So just sort of think about if you've done that process. And then just to mention that 82% of people polled believe that recording their wishes would have taken pressure off of their loved ones. And that 77% agree that having an advanced care plan would make them feel relieved. So it's just really to say that that advanced care planning piece is quite important in life. So, Tara, if you wouldn't mind just starting that advanced care planning video for us, just give people a little bit more of a sense of what advanced care planning is.
I'm just going to stop sharing so that I can bring up. Oh, that is the wrong video. Sorry, just give me a second.
Tara has a lot of screens open right now. We have a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and she's our guru.
You plan all of these things, and there it is. Okay, so I'm going to share this screen. And that's it. It's just a nice short one. Just
We can't see it.
let's see.
that my dad's going to pass away at some point, and how do we deal with that?
So instead of having the conversation with my family, I did end up having the conversation with several people, several of my friends from a similar cultural background.
I never thought that I would have to make decisions like this for my mom. I started to just listen in a very, very present way to every single thing that she had to say. And then suddenly I started to know what questions to ask. And they weren't clinical questions. It was like, at what point, Mom, do you want me to step in and help make decisions for your life? And she said to me, well, at the point at which I can't sit down and pray with you kids. And that's really poignant. That's not making a decision about a ventilator. That's not making a do not resuscitate decision. That's something very, very simple. And all I could say to her is, yes, Mom, I will do that for you.
My sister and I had very...
Or I'll just stop that there. But just to give you a little taste of some of, you know, how we try and really use videos and other resources during the course. And now I'm going to go back to our screen. And of course, issues. There we go.
We're seeing your notes screen.
Oh. There.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're moving into module 3. This part of the course is really where we start to talk about relieving suffering. So many people are afraid to be with their loved ones during the dying process because they don't know what to do, or because they can't handle seeing their loved one in pain. So in this part of the last aid course, we look at common symptoms experienced during dying, the basics of different forms of symptom relief, and some care strategies such as nutrition at end of life, mouth care, and other practical ways to relieve suffering. Again, after this module, participants have a greater ability to act, and with action comes confidence. And they've also reflected on empathy and sympathy to also build confidence. It's really the point where participants start to feel that they've gained practical hands-on knowledge. We talk about what people might actually experience at end of life to reduce fear of the unknown, and it prepares people for what they may see. We introduce basic approaches to symptom relief, and this is not about replacing professionals by any means, but about understanding what comfort looks like and how small actions can make a difference. One of the most important elements is showing that people can help. Even simple things like mouth care or being present can have a real impact, and it really enforces that end-of-life care is not only clinical, it's deeply human, and there is a meaningful role for family, friends, and community. Overall, this module builds confidence and reduces helplessness, and it helps people feel that they can contribute to comfort and dignity at the end of life. I'm going to try and show another video. Third time's the charm, right? So this one is just an example of that hands-on care.
In a lateral, 30-degree lateral position, using the Hoyer lithier sheet, you need to remember to put up the side of the bed to which you are turning the patient. And once again, put the straps on the lift as I showed you before. So you put 3 at the top, and if the patient is big enough, 3 at the bottom. But in this case, I will put 2 at the bottom. See if I can get them all on. And then when you turn the patient on the side, you need to remember to move this arm away from the patient because you don't want them lying on their arm. and to move this arm across the patient. Then you just lift the sheet up, and the patient will turn on their side. This is good for patients who've got very little movement or can help you very little. And when they're up here, then you can put the pillows underneath your back and underneath their legs as you would normally, and then lower them back down onto the pillows so that they're in the 30-degree lateral position.
Now, obviously, not everyone is going to have one of those machines, but it's just to give you an example that there are practical tips involved in the last aid course. And Cheryl's going to talk to us about the fourth module.
Great. Sounds perfect. Thanks. So the final module really focuses on the time around death and moving into the bereavement process. So we introduce different ways of understanding grief and dying, and this includes both formal models and the recognition that everyone experiences this differently. We also touch on practical aspects, such as what happens after the death and the options available for funerals and other arrangements. Lots of people are really unfamiliar with what the options are and what the processes are after a death has occurred. But a key component of this module is really around focusing on communication, about how to be present, how to speak with sensitivity, how to support others who are going through a death and after the death as well. So much to what Tara was talking about as her experience after her dad passed is really touched upon in this module, is how do we talk to each other when you're going through the grief and bereavement process. So this module really reinforces the idea that care doesn't end at the death. So supporting people through grief is an ongoing and a really important part of the compassionate communities movement. So this really brings the course full circle, and participants leave with a greater sense of confidence and compassion and readiness to support others as they're going through this entire journey. So at the end of this course, when everybody's finished all 4 of those modules, they receive a list of resources that they can continue to read, more information about all of the different facets that have been discussed throughout the course itself. And they also get a standardized course evaluation to fill out. And in addition, they receive a certificate of completion. So Tara, I'm going to pass it over to you, but I just want to note that the slides aren't showing. So
Are they back?
They are back.
So just a little bit about participant feedback. To date, we've received 75 course evaluations, and this graph on the screen shows why people are taking this course. So there's a bunch of different reasons. They'd like to learn more about palliative care. They'd like to learn more about death and dying. They want to learn more about bereavement. A lot of things that you would expect from a course like Last Aid, but what I find really interesting is what you can't see on this slide, and that is the other category, which, you know, isn't the biggest, but definitely isn't the smallest. So I'm going to read to you some of the responses that we receive in that other category. So 1, I'm an RN and I often have palliative patients. I work as an LPN in an acute care setting which deals with palliative care. I am a nurse working in palliative care setting. I want to enhance my dialogue with patients. I work in a support role at a hospice society. My work is with aging patients and other vulnerable people. And I think that what this shows is that even though this course is intended for the general public, it is hugely attractive to people who work in healthcare roles. And just a little bit more of the participant feedback. I just want to point out that these surveys are anonymous. So people are The people who take it do not in any way feel that they have to rate the survey highly, but 85% of participants rated the course overall as very good. And just to let you know, very good is the highest that we have in our feedback form. And the remaining 15% rated it as good. So not a single participant has ever rated the course as less than good, our second highest standing. And you can also see on this slide a breakdown of the modules. So the first module, 84.2.9%, second module, 82.86. They're all in that high 80s place. And just one little last slide with a few more statistics. So 91% feel more comfortable talking about death and dying after taking the course. And 91 feel more confident supporting people living with a terminal illness. 84% feel more comfortable providing end-of-life care. 91% feel more confident supporting those experiencing grief and bereavement. And I have to say that these numbers really, really hit me and make me a little bit emotional, because they show that not only is Last Aid helping people who are taking the course, but it is helping all of the people that those people come in contact with who are grieving or who are living with a terminal illness and who are dying, because these participants now feel more comfortable to help, to reach out, to talk and listen to these people, many of whom may not have anyone else who can do this for them. I'm going to pass it back to Cheryl.
Yeah, great. So you'll see on the screen that we just have a testimonial, a couple of testimonials coming up in the next couple of slides from some of the participants. So I encourage you to read it. But much to what Tara said, I always find this kind of feedback really meaningful to read, because it's something that we often feel really proud of, because it reflects exactly what this course is trying to create. What stands out in this particular comment right here is that how it's created a sense of safety. The participants are not just receiving information. They feel like they're entering into a space that's comfortable for sharing, for reflecting, for being open. You know, it's a really warm and welcoming course, despite the topic that people, you know, entering into the course can often feel really, you know, nervous and hesitant in talking about. So it's also important to note that the feedback is really coming from someone with professional experience. Again, much to what Tara pointed out before, we are finding that people who are working in the field, even in palliative care itself, are still gaining something new by taking this course, which really speaks to how accessible and universally relevant the course is for everybody. So one of the most powerful outcomes that we're seeing, and in this quote captures it really well, is that people leave feeling different. They're less afraid. They're more at peace with the process of talking about death, and they're willing to engage in conversations that they wouldn't have before. So that's really what we're trying to move, and a movement that we're trying to make. I mean. So we're also consistently hearing that people are feeling like they can use what they've learned right away, that there's no reflection. It feels really practical, that whether it's starting a conversation with their family tomorrow or supporting someone who they're working with that's at their end of life now, or it's even starting by reflecting on their own wishes at that moment. It's really something that there's parts of it that will resonate with everybody, no matter what stage they're in their life. So the immediate sense of usefulness and confidence that really comes at the heart of the Last Aid program is just great. It's not just about awareness. It's about helping people feel ready to take on the action in their everyday lives. So it's a great tangible experience. Do you want to flip to the next slide if you don't mind, Tara?
Mm-hmm.
So here's some additional reflections that sort of continue to highlight the impact that we're seeing across the course. So what stands out to me in these quotes is really the shift in perspective. So participants are not just learning information, they're rethinking about what they know and what they understand death and dying to be. So they're moving from that fear towards that openness and acceptance. It's bringing the death piece back into our community and into our everyday conversations. There's also a strong emphasis emphasis on how the course feels. So words like compassionate, supportive, approachable are coming up over and over again in the feedback that we're receiving. So it's telling us that this learning environment itself is just as important as the content. So even though the education is often happening online, it's not missing the humanistic element of that togetherness. It's still feeling warm and providing people with the sense of safety that they need. So something we've heard quite consistently, that's worth noting is about how many healthcare professionals are choosing to take the course. So I know we've mentioned this a couple of times now, but people in these fields are really feeling supported in that the Last Aid program is supplementing their knowledge, and it's particularly helpful for them around that communication and community-based support. So things that they're maybe not learning in the classroom environment, but are more everyday practical skills that are helpful. So it really is reinforcing the idea that the course isn't just for the general public. Of course, it is for them as well, but it's bridging a gap between professional knowledge and the everyday human experiences that we have in caring for supporting loved ones and having these conversations that we should be all having regularly. So we're starting to see growth and engagement in the program itself. So to date, we've hosted 3 online facilitator training sessions. We've received 35 course evaluations from those facilitators, and we have 113 people that are now participating, that have now participated in a facilitator training course. So this is just the start of the growth of the program. So as we build up our facilitators, we're also building up capacity to deliver the program into the community. So it's showing that there's a willingness for people to engage in this topic, and people want to get this information out into the community. So overall, this feedback is really continuing to point to the same outcome. People are leaving and feeling way more comfortable than when they came into the course, more confident and more prepared to engage with death and dying in their own lives in general. So I'm just going to ask Tara to flip over to our next slide, which is also a video that I'd like to share from one of our facilitators, just on what it means for her to be a facilitator of the program. And then once this video is done, we just have a couple more slides and we're going to open it up to some Q&A.
Just on that, Cheryl, I'm just noticing the time. I know we have a hard stop at 1.
Do we want to skip the video then and just do our last couple of slides?
I think that might be best, if that's okay with you.
Sure, that sounds fine. So just to note that we do have a whole host of incredible facilitators who are doing marvelous things and saying marvelous things about the program. So, so Tara, why don't you move into your last slide, and then I'll go into my last slide after that.
Okay. So where are we now? At this point, as Cheryl was saying, we've hosted actually 4 online facilitator training, but the last one was just recently. So we did 3 in 2025 and 1 in 2026. We are regularly holding Ontario, British Columbia, and PEI focus courses, and we should be offering Alberta, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia focus courses soon. If you would like to take a course, it's chpca.ca/lastaid, and at the bottom of that page, you will also find a form to sign up for our newsletters if you'd like to learn when future Last Aid courses are being held.
Marvelous. Thanks. So just very quickly, our last slide is just sort of the long-term vision. So, so at its core, Last Aid is about building confidence and capacity within communities. So our goal is to make sure that Canadians feel more informed, more comfortable, and more capable of supporting others at the end of their lives. So in terms of how we're doing this, accessibility is really key. The program's aim is to reach a wide range of audiences, including children, adults, healthcare workers, and diverse communities. So as you know, we offer the program both in person and virtually. It's helping to reduce the barriers the geography and whatnot in this country sometimes provides in being able to access courses like this. We're finding that right now, one of our biggest things is trying to find a strong program that depends on, available sustainability. So we're trying to find a mix of funding sources that ensures that volunteers and partners feel engaged and valued and supported, and that it's continuously running in the background. So this is something we're really working on building up. So if we look ahead towards the future of Last Aid, it's important to recognize that Last Aid is also part of a broader global movement. So there are ongoing efforts internationally to adapt the courses for different groups. So there's currently programs being developed for children and teens, deaf communities, diverse populations, professionals, healthcare professionals, and in workplace settings. So you may start to see Last Aid cropping up in all different facets of your life, depending on where you're engaging in different things. So in Canada, we're actively working on expanding the program's reach. We're trying to find some support for translating it into French and in training French-speaking facilitators. We're also trying to continue strengthening the tools that are available to facilitators. So we're doing some translations of facilitator handbooks and guides and that kind of stuff. So all this to say that we're really bringing back an international feel amongst what we're doing in Canada as well. So it's we're building on what's happening internationally to strengthen the movement in Canada, and we're feeding back what's happening in Canada into the international movement. So I'm going to pause there because I know there's not much time left for questions, but I do want to open it up and see if there is anything else that anybody might have.
Thank you, Tara and Cheryl. That was fabulous to hear where you've come from and where we're going in Canada. So again, we have a few minutes for questions. If you want to type them in the chat box, then we'll read them out and we'll have a quick discussion. I was really interested to hear, when you're saying who's taking this course, that the other is healthcare professionals. And I'm wondering if that's because you've done such a great job at making it accessible.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think there's also something to be said that, people are really looking for quick wins. So that communication piece is really hard. So when you get something that's so tangible and so relatable to the average person, it's really easy to take it into a healthcare context in a way that's already sort of easy to speak to people because the program itself is speaking to people. So it's quite an interesting phenomenon. So we're interested in hearing in what that Last Aid course that's for healthcare practitioners, how it interrelates with the Last Aid that we have now, because I think it's going to be a really exceptional program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's because it's so broad, it catches everything. And then what I do love is that you follow it with resources that are specific to that province. So I'm wondering if, because you've done that and you've really tried to contextualize it across Canada, if that's contributed to how well it's been the uptake.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. There is, the resources and the slides themselves have really been developed depending on which province that you're in. So it is speaking a, language that people are understanding across the Canadian, landscape. That is maybe a blessing and a curse that we have. We have a great big wide, country, but often we're not speaking on the same terms. So it is relatable depending on, whatever province you're in, and it's crafted to the thinking that's, happening in your own communities, in your own hospital settings, and so on. So I appreciate you bringing that up for sure.
Yeah. So we've got a comment here, Susan. I'm very interested in taking this course. Thank you. Yes, Susan, absolutely. The link is just above. If you want to press on that, and it's on the slide as well. You'll see all the offerings. I know I am a facilitator myself. I'm a clinical nurse specialist in hospice palliative care, and we're having one that's BC focused coming up, I think next month. So would be happy to see you there.
Marvelous. Thank you for being a facilitator, Claire. We really, we love having everybody on board. So we are going to be continuing to do facilitator training, and but for now, one of our early adopters right here, and we really love having you as a facilitator. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just looking at the time. So I do, just to wrap up, thank you, Cheryl and Tara, and everybody who's attended today's webinar. We encourage you to attend other events scheduled for Embrace Aging Month. So please visit our website at OkanaganEmbraceAging.com for all the events and registration. We look forward to growing this event in the Okanagan and encourage anyone interested in supporting Embrace Aging in the future to please contact us. Contact information is available on our website. And you will receive an email with a link to an online evaluation form. So we absolutely welcome everybody's feedback on today and any suggestions for planning for future Embrace Aging Month events. Yes, and Susan's wondering about sharing this recording, and Jaquetta has connected with that. She'll put that up on our channel. So thank you, everybody. It's 11 o'clock. Goodbye. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.